Ladies and gentlemen, happy Valentine's Day. Dr. Larry Burchett. I'm here to discuss with you and answer a question: do married men live longer than unmarried men? And I think for those of us who are young dudes out there thinking about getting married, we're single, might be asking yourself, should I get married for my health? Is there a benefit to that? I looked at this Harvard article, lays out a lot of good data, and I want to review some of that with you and come to a conclusion and give my recommendation onto whether you should factor this in to getting married or not. A little bit controversial. You can kind of make up your own opinion. Let me share with you some of the data from this Harvard article. Number one, there was some Japanese data that never married men were three times more likely to die from cardiovascular disease than married men in this period that they followed them. 3 times as likely to die, unmarried over married. Okay, number two, the Framingham Offspring study, in which married men had a 46% lower rate of death than unmarried men in a 10-year period. That's like almost half. Like, that's a big deal. This isn't like 5 or 10% of some small numbers. And then the third one is this interesting University of Miami prostate cancer study where they followed these guys for 17 years in terms of how long they survived with prostate cancer. And it was different based on whether you were married, unmarried, or divorced or widowed. So the married guys survived the longest, 69 months. Those never married, 49 months, so those were the single guys, kind of in the middle, but then only 38 months, so the least for those that were divorced and widowed. So all of these studies seem to suggest a correlation, a connection between being married and survival or longevity. Now, let's kind of break that down a little bit. So the first thing that I was wondering was, okay, is this like the institution of marriage? Like, what if you compare to a lifelong partnership, or people that are just kind of committed to, but they didn't get married, right? Because like institution of marriage is, let's be honest, like it's not as popular as it used to be today in contemporary times. But this is what the article says about that. It says, people living with unmarried partners tend to fare better than those living alone. So partners are better than single in terms of longevity. But men living with their wives have the best health of all. So there does seem to be, even, compared to a lifelong committed companion, marriage, according to these numbers, may offer some kind of benefit. I was kind of surprised to hear that. I was like, oh, okay, so there's a little additional health benefit to that. I don't know. These are just the numbers, right? What do you make of that? Another thing that kind of commonly comes up as an objection, and I thought about this too, was you hear these numbers and you're like, okay, so there's an association between married men living longer than the other guys. But could it be, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it that marriage helps these men live longer, or is it that healthy men get and stay married? Again, the article directly encounters this and says, actually, unhealthy men marry earlier and are less likely to divorce. And they're more likely to get married again following divorce and bereavement than healthy men. So if there's a benefit of marriage, the unhealthy guys should be getting it. But in fact, they're using marriage more and not seeing those benefits. So it's not that healthy get married, unhealthy don't. Unhealthy do get married. That can't explain the benefit of marriage. Interesting, right? So there is some kind of benefit to this. Well, what is it? What are the explanations? The Harvard article mentions, breaks it down into 3 explanations. I think these are kind of good to think about. One, we always like this as doctors in medicine, right? What's the biological or the physiologic explanation? There's kind of 3 things I'm just going to throw out there. We don't know. The answer is we don't know. Inflammation is a very popular mechanism of chronic disease these days. So somehow, perhaps, marriage offers protection against chronic inflammation. So maybe it kind of chills you out, you relax, it dials down some of that inflammatory response, which can lead to chronic disease. Similarly and related is the stress response. fight or flight, adrenaline. Living in kind of a hyper-adrenergic state can put unneeded stress on your heart, your arteries, etc. Make high blood pressure worse. Maybe if you're married, you have a better stress response. Now, the third thing, and one of my favorites too, is perhaps marriage. In marriage, you release more endorphins, natural morphines, which lower your anxiety and pain. Maybe some or all three of these are involved, are the biologic, the physiologic mechanism for how in a good supportive marriage there's some benefits. Maybe it kind of chills you out, you relax, it dials down some of that inflammatory response, which can lead to chronic disease. Similarly and related is the stress response, fight or flight, adrenaline. Living in kind of a hyper-adrenergic state can put unneeded stress on your heart, your arteries, etc. Make high blood pressure worse. Maybe if you're married, you have a better stress response. Now, the third thing, and one of my favorites too, is perhaps marriage. In marriage, you release more endorphins, natural morphines, which lower your anxiety and pain. Maybe some or all three of these are involved, are the biologic, the physiologic mechanism for how in a good supportive marriage there's some benefits to your life and longevity. Okay, so the two other explanations, that was the physiologic explanation. There's behavior and psychological. So behavior, this one's kind of more obvious. Married men tend to eat better, exercise more, drink less to excess, smoke less, and go to the doctor more. In my experience, how many times have I seen some old guy dragged in by his wife when he would not come into the ER and the guy ends up having the heart attack? I've seen that more than once. So maybe that's the main protective reason that married people live longer, is the wife drags the husband in when otherwise he wouldn't come in. I think that's entirely possible as an explanation. The third thing is psychological. And there's a lot of research today. I've been more and more interested in this, in the benefit, especially into old age, but it's in young age as well, of social connectedness and relationships, maintaining relationships. That there's benefit of that, and then there's also harm of being isolated and lonely. Maybe that is a good kind of psychological explanation. Decreased rates of depression, suicide, Alzheimer's, all of that stuff with marriage as well. So maybe it's just a form of social connectedness, which then kind of leads me, to think, well, maybe you don't have to get married to get that benefit. Similarly, if you're part of a tight-knit family or friends, people that keep an eye on you, that inspire you to live better and go to the doctor and take care of yourself and chill you out. If you can maybe you can get enough of that social interaction as part of a family or kind of a closer unit. I think that would go a long way in explaining a lot of this stuff. Contrasting that with somebody who is single, widowed, divorced, who doesn't have a lot of social connectedness, isn't going to get all of those benefits from that. I think that probably explains. I like the behavior explanation. I like the some of the social connectedness explanation for why this may be the case. Okay, so do I think as a doctor that you should think about getting married for your health, for the health benefits? I don't think so. I don't think that sounds like, I don't know, that sounds like a way to end up with the wrong person. I think you get married because you love somebody and you want to be with them through richer and poor, sickness and health, good times and bad. You just want to commit to that part. I think you do it for another reason. I think getting married may have a benefit to your health and living long and happiness and a good life. And let me throw this caveat in here, because I actually do think this. There's a benefit to it if you have a good marriage, right? If you have a good marriage with a good supportive marriage. I thought about this, doesn't this just sound romantic and great? Like sleeping next to somebody that you love, who loves you for the rest of your life. Yeah, you're probably going to live longer and happier. right? But if you're sleeping next to somebody that's a pain in the ass, that's just conflict that you do not get along with, that's probably going to harm your health and happiness. I'm not telling you to get divorced, but when we're looking at these things, just getting married for the benefit of health, I think that might be a little seductive. That might be a trap. I would certainly not advise that. Now, okay, here's my final conclusion, because I'm 39, right? I'm a single guy, a single dad. How does this, reading this and hearing this stuff, that there may be a benefit to marriage, to my health, like how does that affect me? What does that make me think? You know, it actually kind of is another one of a lot of little things that softens me a little bit and makes me think, hey buddy, you'd probably be happier, you'd live a little longer. Maybe it opens me up a little bit more, you know, to a long-term committed thing. Maybe marriage. Maybe it does. That's where I'm at on this Valentine's Day. So there you go, for all the lovebirds out there. Does marriage help you live longer? Does a little loving your whole life, does that help you live longer? I think it probably does. Happy Valentine's Day.